Millions in Syria and Iraq face severe water scarcity as the Euphrates, the region's most enduring river, steadily recedes. In Sego Canyon, Utah, an unusual stretch of land emerges. For millennia, sacred texts have spoken of fallen angels confined beneath the Euphrates, entities held captive, not vanquished, awaiting a specific moment. This admonition was largely disregarded, until now. The Euphrates is diminishing at an unprecedented rate, one that no natural phenomena can fully elucidate. Ancient soil is cracking open, revealing sealed chambers, and whispers spread among locals of movement below the surface. Biblical narratives portray these beings as dangerous, confined, and destined for release only when the final stage commences. This is no longer remote theology. It is current geography, precise timing, and it is unfolding before our eyes. Many now fear the prison of the fallen is weakening, and when it breaches, the world will be transformed forever. Like, comment, and subscribe for prophetic insights rooted in Scripture, not conjecture. For centuries, the Euphrates River has been viewed as a constant, an immovable lifeline of the Middle East, flowing through the very lands where civilization first blossomed. Nevertheless, in recent years, this presumption has crumbled. The Euphrates is no longer slowly receding, as rivers do during dry spells. Instead, it is failing abruptly, violently, and inconsistently in ways that continue to perplex scientists, historians, and theologians alike. Satellite imagery from the past few years reveals a pattern that defies typical climatic behavior. Significant portions of the river are not gradually narrowing. They are fracturing into pieces. Extensive sections collapse into fragmented basins, leaving behind rugged channels of mud and exposed rock. In some areas, water vanishes within weeks, not seasons. Researchers acknowledge that climate change and dam systems play a role, but even these explanations fall short of accounting for the speed and irregular nature of the retreat. What is most alarming is how the river dries. It does not uniformly recede from its banks. Instead, entire segments seem to give way at once, as if the support beneath the riverbed has been removed. Deep fissures split the ground where flowing water once concealed instability. Ancient strata of sediment, untouched in recorded history, are suddenly exposed to air and sunlight. Archaeologists concede that portions of the riverbed, now visible, have not been seen for thousands of years. Local inhabitants add another layer of apprehension. Villagers along the river describe subtle tremors felt underfoot before collapses occur. Some report the ground vibrating faintly, followed by sudden drops in water level. These are not major earthquakes, but localized disturbances concentrated along the old river channel. Seismologists quietly note that the patterns resemble underground tectonic shifts rather than surface erosion. As these accounts spread, biblical scholars have been compelled to revisit an unsettling passage, Revelation 16:12. The verse does not describe the Euphrates gradually drying. It speaks of it being dried up, as if by an act that removes restraint. For generations, this language was treated symbolically. Now, the physical reality unfolding on the ground mirrors the text with disturbing accuracy. The growing apprehension among observers is not merely environmental. Many believe the river has functioned as a boundary, something that concealed, restrained, or covered what lies beneath. As the Euphrates weakens, that boundary weakens with it. The question being asked quietly but with increasing frequency is this: is the river simply shrinking, or is it being released from its role as a seal? If the Euphrates was never just water, but a divider between the visible and invisible, then its collapse may signify more than an ecological crisis. It may mark the first discernible stage of something long restrained now beginning to surface. In multiple locations along the former river channel, peculiar mounds of mud have formed overnight, rising where the ground had been flat just hours earlier. These formations are not gradual accumulations shaped by wind or water. They appear suddenly, as if something beneath the surface is pressing upward. Witnesses describe the same sequence repeatedly. First, a faint, low, continuous hissing sound, followed by a deep rumble that seems to travel through the ground rather than the air. Moments later, the mud begins to swell. In some instances, it lifts several feet before rupturing, releasing short-lived geysers of thick slurry that burst upward and then collapse back into themselves. The eruptions are brief, controlled, and oddly localized, more akin to pressure release vents than natural blowouts. Geologists analyzing footage and soil samples admit the phenomenon does not align with known mud volcano activity. There is no identified gas source large enough to explain the pressure. No geothermal system exists beneath this section of the Euphrates. The region's geological history offers no precedent for repeated rhythmic mud displacement, occurring precisely as the river loses its weight above. The behavior suggests force being applied from below, not erosion from above. Local residents report physical sensations accompanying these events. Several describe feeling vibrations through their feet and legs when standing near the mounds. Others speak of a strange heaviness in the chest, or a sense of energy in the air immediately before the ground shifts. These accounts are consistent across villages separated by miles, yet occurring along the same exposed river path. The ground does not tremble randomly. It responds in specific zones, as if pressure is concentrated beneath select points. Biblical scholars observing these developments have returned to Revelation 9, which speaks of restrained beings held until an appointed hour. The language is precise. These entities are not destroyed nor absent. They are bound, contained, awaiting a moment defined not by human action, but by timing. To many, the rising mud appears less like a natural phenomenon and more like the visible stress of restraint under strain. The key detail troubling researchers is the correlation. The more the Euphrates dries, the more active the ground becomes. As the river's mass and pressure diminish, disturbances increase. This has led to a growing suspicion that the river itself played a role beyond geography, that it functioned as a stabilizing layer, pressing down on something ancient beneath it. If that is true, then the rising mud is not the cause of the disturbance. It is the symptom, a surface response to a prison below that is no longer held in place as it once was. What lies beneath has not emerged, but the pressure is no longer silent. What first appeared to be irregular shadows along the newly exposed riverbanks soon resolved into openings, cave mouths that had never been documented, mapped, or referenced in any archaeological survey. These were not collapsed tunnels or erosion pockets. They were intact entrances, hidden for millennia beneath flowing water. What immediately disturbed researchers was their precision. The cave openings were not jagged or fractured, as natural formations typically are. Instead, they displayed unnatural symmetry, straight vertical edges, smooth arcs, and nearly perfect circular shapes carved into hardened stone. Measurements showed consistent dimensions across multiple entrances, suggesting standardized design rather than random formation. Nature does not repeat geometry with intent. Whatever created these openings did so deliberately. As teams began cautious entry into the upper chambers, they encountered another anomaly. The cave walls were coated with thick mineral layers, dense deposits that form only when a space remains sealed and undisturbed for extremely long periods. These layers were uniform, indicating that water had not flowed through the caves intermittently. They had been completely isolated. No air exchange, no light, no human presence. The conclusion was unavoidable. These chambers had been intentionally closed off, not abandoned. The deeper explorers moved, the more the environment defied expectation. Despite the desert heat above, temperatures inside the caves dropped sharply. Instruments recorded cold air currents flowing upward from below, far colder than the surrounding rock could naturally produce. This suggested the caves were connected to a much deeper internal system, one extending far beneath the riverbed, beyond what surface-level caverns could explain. The cold was constant, not seasonal, implying depth rather than exposure. Lighting equipment revealed construction details that further deepened the mystery. Walls met floors at precise angles. Corridors extended straight for long distances before turning sharply, maintaining exact alignment. In several sections, ceilings were reinforced with stone slabs fitted together without visible mortar. These features did not resemble Babylonian, Assyrian, or Sumerian craftsmanship. They did not match any known Mesopotamian architectural style. Perhaps most unsettling were the areas explorers chose not to enter. Some passageways narrowed abruptly, marked by smooth stone barriers that appeared fused into place rather than collapsed. Others descended steeply into darkness, where air pressure shifted suddenly, triggering alarms on monitoring equipment. Teams reported an unshakable sense of resistance, not fear, but restraint, as if the space itself discouraged further movement. The pattern became clear. These caves were not shelters. They were not storage chambers. They were not burial sites. They were designed to isolate, to divide, and to descend layer by layer away from the surface world. As reports circulated quietly among researchers, one realization began to take hold. These structures were not built for humans to inhabit. These structures were constructed to confine something, to secure it deep within the earth, far beyond the reach of human curiosity. If you're following this inquiry, please like, comment, and subscribe, because what unfolds further down is considerably more unsettling. The lower levels resist any light. When illumination finally penetrates their surfaces, it reveals something much more alarming than mere architecture. Messages, inscribed by individuals who evidently grasped the peril of what resided beneath. The rocky surfaces are not barren. They are layered, adorned with etchings carved at different times by disparate hands, yet unified by a singular objective. Linguists swiftly identify various ancient scripts engraved into the walls. Akkadian script appears first, deeply incised and eroded, suggesting extreme antiquity. Superimposed are Ugaritic characters, sharper but still ancient. Interspersed among them are fragments of Proto-Hebrew, carved with urgency rather than artistic flair. These inscriptions do not form stories or supplications. They are directives, brief, recurrent, absolute. Do not open. Do not release. This phrasing recurs repeatedly, sometimes layered over previous warnings, as if each era felt compelled to reiterate the identical prescription. In several areas, the words are etched into the stone with inconsistent depth, suggesting haste or apprehension. Whoever carved them did not seek perpetuation. They sought elucidation. Among the text are carvings that defy any cultural categorization. 4 immense figures dominate the imagery, each depicted with elongated forms and stiff postures. Their faces are indistinct, intentionally obscured, while their limbs are bound in chains, rendered not as metal, but as flowing lines of fire or energy. The chains extend outwards, anchoring the figures to the stone itself. No struggle is portrayed, only confinement. Art historians observe the resemblance to early Watcher traditions and Nephilim symbolism found in apocryphal writings.